Welcome to Lessons That Last, where a researcher and a teacher talk about what it means to make a lasting impact on students' lives. They unpack the stories former students shared about their memorable teachers and discuss how we can all make a greater impact on the people in our lives. Here's Julie and Laura.
Hello, and welcome back to the Lessons That Last podcast. I'm Julie Hassan, professor, researcher, and with me is my one-of-a-kind co-host,
Laura Estes-Swilly, just a teacher, a writer, and a regular old girl.
Living the dream.
Yes.
Just living the dream.
I am.
Teaching in Florida in October.
It is. It's the dream. But it is. It's good.
It is good. Well, it is what you make it.
Exactly.
And you make it good.
And I do.
I love the story you picked for today.
I'm so glad. I felt like it would really touch us.
It's one of my faves. And as I prepared for this, I was thinking about our tendency as humans to have this sort of negativity bias and remember the things that happen that weren't positive, or like when we get feedback about something or comments about something, we tend to focus on the things that aren't positive.
Yes.
And if there's 100 positive comments and one not so nice, we're going to perseverate on the not so nice, right?
We spend time on that for sure. For sure.
Yeah. And still, like, I'm certain more so as middle schoolers, high schoolers, but even now as an adult and all the work I've done on that, still I do that.
Yeah, because you're a person and it is human nature, like you said, and we want to be great. We want to be our best selves. And when anyone sort of throws an arrow at that best self, that's a painful arrow. And we hold on to that pain. You can get 100 compliments, but that one arrow, we're going to feel it.
So I was working this week because I do have the best job ever.
You do.
With Fulbright teachers at App State. So
Yes.
There are 24 of them from all around the world. Ukraine, India, Chile, like I can't even name all the places. And we were talking about what a risk it is to be a learner. That our learners have to take some risks. And one of those risks is being shamed or humiliated when you answer a question, share a thought, share something you created. So talk about that in your classroom. I know you are very cognizant of that. How do you create a culture where that's not such a scary thing?
For me, it's all about equality. We're all sharing. We're all doing. We are all on the same plane. Even if we're not necessarily on the same level on that plane, we're all on the same plane. But when you said that, I was really thinking about something we've seen a lot with some of our Hispanic students, where male Hispanic students aren't necessarily encouraged to be students. They're not always proud to do great work or turn in great work or get grades. And that's a hurdle that you have to get over in your classroom. And I've seen that time and time again, where maybe you have to quietly encourage, quietly take the assignments, quietly give the grades. That's not maybe the name you're putting on the board is like, he made the curve. Look at this awesome kid, because he can't take that. His rep can't take that.
You're not putting the Scarlet A.
No,
A plus.
the Scarlet A plus or the Scarlet S student. So there are cultural things as well as just social things. I think that when you get in the higher level courses, it's a social boon to do well, to be doing well. They compete, they They like compare grades. They're always on that. But in the lower level, they're not. They're just not.
It's not part of their identity.
No.
Like it is for high achieving students. That
Exactly.
A is part of my identity, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And I was thinking, speaking of our students who identify as Latino or Latina, for our English language learners, working with these Fulbright teachers who are brilliant made me think about what a risk it is when you're sharing in a second language.
Yes.
And so sometimes I could tell they had something really important and brilliant to say, but they were so afraid they would sound dumb. And they would
Yes.
say that, like, I'm just searching for the word, or I don't know how to say this. One of them was trying to think, we were talking about leadership. And a woman from India was trying to think of the word patriarchy. And it took her a little while for me to understand what she meant and help her find that word. So definitely for our English language learners, there's some risk.
Yes. And when I was teaching the English language learners, I had them at the end of the day. And I always felt like that was such a disservice to them. They spent the whole day struggling with language, struggling with being quiet, because they don't feel like anybody wants to hear what they have to say, that clumsy English. And then they would come in at the end of the day, 7th period, and all of that expression was bottled up inside them, ready to explode. And they were tired, of course. They were tired of being quiet in addition. And they were not really excited about taking risks because their whole day was structured around not taking risks. And that's not fair. Like, everyone should be taking risks. That's academics, right? We don't grow until we take a risk. And we have to create that environment where everyone is a student, where everyone is taking risks. And that's really hard for students who are in some way different from everyone else.
So do you remember as a student, could be elementary, but maybe middle or high, a time when you took a risk and got some painful or hurtful feedback or response?
I do remember that in college, honestly, being just crucified in front of my peers in college and wanting to never go back. So in high school, I don't think I ever took a risk. I just don't. That's not who I was. And in middle school, no, I feel like I had very supportive teachers. If I was willing to do something, they wanted to encourage me, period. It really wasn't until college that I took risks and every once in a while got slapped back or like pushed down.
Wow.
So that's a testament, though, Julie, to the teachers we had.
It is.
For 12 years, I took risks, I'm sure, academic risks, tried new things, participated in debates, wrote stories, wrote essays, wrote plays, did my thing. And I only felt encouraged. I don't remember ever feeling pushed down.
I told you earlier, we chatted a little before we pushed record, that I had one teacher who wasn't an academic teacher. She was a homeroom teacher who just really didn't care for me for some reason. Who knows? Maybe
there are
reminded her of someone. I don't know, because I don't think I said a word in a homeroom. But I still remember, like, we talk about on this podcast the impact teachers make and the beautiful things we remember, but students carry the painful things as well, and sometimes those are louder.
Yes. I had a student 2 years ago who I was sharing some of your research with my students. It was one of those days we were kicked out of my classroom for some reason. I don't remember why. We were in this tiny little classroom, all huddled together, not conducive to learning. I didn't have books. I wonder why we were kicked out. But I was sharing like your research, and we were talking about teachers and learning. And one of my students shared a story about what happened to him it was late elementary, and this horrible situation. And he told me, that's why I don't ever like a teacher. That's why I will never be nice to a teacher when I walk in the room. And that's why it's taken you this long to get to know me. And that was like spring. I had him for months and months, and he was a Rubik's Cube to me. And he told me, I will never be nice to a teacher. I will never think of a teacher as on my side or my friend because of this one thing that happened. And he was a senior. Thousands of things had happened in his education, but that one became the giant shadow over everything else.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. How about, so we had super supportive teachers for the most part.
Yeah, we
Our
did.
teachers were great. How about peers? Do you remember painful things from peers?
All the time. Not necessarily regarding academics. I think that I was probably after our sophomore year, which we were together in English, but our paths diverged at a point.
Mhm.
And I was in sort of regular old classes, and you went into dual enrollment or AP classes. And no one was competitive in that world that I was in. Nobody cared. Nobody said, how did you do on that test? What did you do on that essay? Unless they needed help, right? And then, of course, I was there to help. But on a different sense, on a non-academic sense, I was a constant target for our peers only because I wasn't small. I was a big girl. I was probably 5'7" in our sophomore year, and I'm 5'7" now. We stopped growing. And I don't know. I look back at the pictures and I'm like, why did I think I was fat? Because
Right.
everyone told me I was fat. I knew I was bigger than you, but I don't know. I heard it from my friends.
And I was the opposite, like
Right.
tiny girl. So
Tiny girl.
a tiny girl, like no curves, right?
Mhm.
And so then you get a little bit of ridicule for that. Like
Exactly.
you have to be the perfect amount of thin, right?
Exactly.
Not too thin.
No, not too thin and not too big. And I think back to those times where I was really internalizing that from my peers. So I'm glad that I wasn't internalizing things about my abilities, right? It was just my looks. So I could overcome that in a different way. If I had been internalizing that about myself as a learner or a thinker or a writer, that might have held me back. I knew there were two planes in my life. There was the physical plane and there was the intellectual plane.
Right.
And I definitely heard a lot about myself on the physical plane, but not on the intellectual plane. No one criticized me at all in that way because I don't think they were looking at me that way, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And for me, it's funny because we didn't really talk about that.
No.
Because we know now as teachers, kids don't talk about things that make them feel shame.
Right.
Like that's why shame is so powerful because we don't talk about it.
Exactly.
And for me, I was always very shy, like not around you.
Right. No, not at all.
You were my space where I was unshy, but like super quiet around people I didn't know, and like social battery only went so long, and I was pretty focused. I knew if I wanted to go to the school I was hoping to go to, I had to get a scholarship. And I think for me, just hardworking anyway, because there was so much going on at home and other places that I just was pretty driven to like be perfect, like
Yes.
pretty driven to be perfect. And so I think the thing that was hurtful to me was, oh, she's so stuck up. You know,
Yes.
like, who does she think she is?
And I don't think I could be wrong, but I don't think that was you in high school. I don't think anyone said that in high school. I think that was when we were younger.
Probably middle school. I mean, middle school is
awful. Awful. And I remember when you came to our private school,
Yeah, because you were there first. Yeah.
For 6 years, and I knew everyone on the campus, and then we suddenly doubled because of the busing situation in our area. And you were a stranger. You were pretty. And there were a lot of things to be said about you from the voices, right?
Right.
And that made me want to know you. So I guess I'm a little different. I didn't want to, let's gossip about this girl nobody knows. I was like,
so mysterious. That may be the only time in my life I was ever mysterious.
Yes, I hear this gossip. I want to know. So I know that you had some of that pressure. Absolutely. No question. And I think you handled it beautifully externally or internally. That was a whole different story. But you're right. In all of these years, 40 years, you and I have never talked about either of these things.
I know,
mine or yours.
So you wonder, like, if we all, as now adult and maybe fully formed humans, got together and really talked about middle school, we would all have painful stories like that. Everybody in middle school has been on the receiving end of really painful judgment and criticism and just cruelty for some reason at that age.
Well, we are all insecure at that age, early teens. Everyone is insecure. And what makes you feel more secure, apparently, is making other people feel less secure. So that putting people down to build ourselves up. And if you look at our society, a lot of adults do that too.
It's true.
Yeah.
And we talk about risk, and like, even for you and me, as far as we've come since middle school, some things still feel risky. So I had an article in Edutopia published this week.
I was so excited.
Oh, thank you. And I said to Brian, I can't read the comments. Like, I was so afraid to read the comments. And so today he's like, there's 4 comments in there, and I could feel like my pulse quicken, I could feel the sweat start. And he's like, no, you really should read them. They are really thoughtful and kind, but you brace yourself for what do you know? Well, all of the, and they will likely come at some point, because even for you and I, who publish in the education world, there's some mean teachers out there.
Oh, yeah. Like, mean girls grow up. They're still mean. And I was thinking while you were saying that you have been so much of a guide for me in this work and in our writing our book and starting our podcast and putting ourselves out there in the world, that I know that there are people saying those exact things about me. There's no doubt. And you have reminded me constantly, it's about the work. It's not about the words that people say. It's about what you're doing and why you're doing it.
And I try to think, because I do the work I do because I love teaching and I love teachers. Like, it just, it's what I choose to invest in.
Yes.
And I try to look at it as a gift, and I'm going to give this gift to teachers. And if they don't receive it, I can't do anything about that. I'm going to offer it and hope that it helps you with the best of intentions. And if you receive it differently, you can't do anything about that. But I'd rather not read this comment.
Exactly. Every gift doesn't hit, but I don't want to hear how you didn't like my gift.
Exactly. Like, this gift mistakes.
Yes.
Oh, it's so risky to create something and put it out in the world. I was listening to Oprah this week. She was on, I want to say Glennon Doyle's podcast, We Can Do Hard Things. And she was talking about that. She was talking about the movie Beloved, which to her was her greatest failure. And she said, I was so sure that this would be a world-changing thing to say, look at the story of this woman of color who had been enslaved. And Oprah had loved that Toni Morrison book so much and thought it was so powerful and really thought she had created a movie that would capture that. And she talks about some of the comments, but they were not beautiful, not well received.
No.
And I can't even remember what movie. Oh, Bride of Chucky came out the same week as Beloved.
Oh my gosh.
Just killed it in the box office. And I thought even Oprah knows what this feels like. She said it felt like such a failure. And one of her friends said to her, "What was your intention?" And she said, "My intention was to help people see that even when you feel enslaved and even when you feel like there's not a lot of hope, you can find something beautiful and you can come out of that." And he said the people who need to receive that will receive that.
Yes.
So even Oprah, even
Oprah, but also even Mother Morrison.
That is true, because
that's Toni Morrison,
her story,
heart in a book. And it didn't translate. It just didn't translate to the box office in some way. It was in the right place in a book, waiting for the right people to pick it up who could receive it. And it's the same with a film. I think the right people will go and the right people will receive the message. And we can't always listen to the critics. We just can't. I wish I could go back to 13 and know what I know and not listen to the critics. Yeah,
same. And maybe we just do need to talk to kids about that more.
Yes.
Everybody feels this way because I think when you're in middle school, you think you're the only one.
Yes.
Everybody else is fine. Everybody else is cool. Everybody else knows what they're doing. And you're the only one who feels like that.
Right. And no one knows what they're doing. I try to talk to my seniors about that. And I think a lot of teachers I work with try to bring that out in their classrooms. Everyone is in the same place. We're just all wearing a mask. We're just all appearing to know exactly what we're doing. And if the beautiful thing would be if we could all take our masks off and be real with each other. But that's probably too vulnerable for 17-year-olds.
Yeah.
But they have to hear it. And I don't know that their parents know that. Like if you don't work with or spend time with 125 17-year-olds a day or 180 17-year-olds a day, you don't know that all of them are in the same place.
Yeah.
All of them are full of insecurities, are full of being unsure, and all of them are wearing a mask. And it's got to be even worse in middle school. I can't.
It has to be. And we didn't have social media. I mean,
it's awful.
Wow. And it's not something that as adults, like as much as we pour into them, it can't erase some of that pure.
No.
Like I am very lucky that I have a mom who just thinks that anyone who would have any kind of problem with me is clearly just jealous.
Yes. Yes. Jealous or just not right. They're off in some way.
She loves you so much. She would say the same thing about you.
Yes.
But clearly anyone who doesn't love everything we do, it's not okay.
Exactly.
Oh, she's the best. But even as loved as I was by friends like you and my family and my people, that peer stuff hurts, which is why I love this story that you pulled out today. So this one comes from Myah, and she remembers her 6th grade teacher, Mr. Vincent. And I think such a powerful lesson and model for us and how to help kids navigate this. So when you
straight out of middle school.
Oh,
yes.
Right in the heart. The middle school. So would you, Laura, share Myah's story about Mr. Vincent with us?
I will. I remember walking by the art room in 6th grade and always hearing music and laughter. And so when it came time to choose classes for 7th grade, I chose art as my elective. One of the first projects Mr. Vincent assigned was a self-portrait. Mine looked like an alien, which seemed fitting since I usually felt like an alien. I was tall and gangly, and I hadn't quite grown into my nose yet. I felt so self-conscious when Mr. Vincent mounted our portraits on tagboard and displayed them around the room. Then he gave us each a felt tip pen and asked us to write one descriptive word on the tagboard about the person in the portrait. When we finished, he sent us all back to our own self-portraits to read what others had written. I could hardly believe the complimentary words written around my portrait. People described me as unique, funny, and stylish. I took those kind words to heart, and over time, I began to see myself that way. I learned so much more than brushstrokes in Mr. Vincent's class. He taught me that we are all works of art. Our imperfections make us interesting. I'm so grateful for the perspective he gave me on art and on life.
Oh, I need Mr. Vincent
I know.
in my life.
He had it going on. And I was thinking when I read this the first time and the third time and the 5th time and the 6th time, what a brave man. He believed in those 7th graders that they had a culture of positivity, that no one was going to write something awful or something silly or something mocking on anyone's tag board. And he did it early. Like that was early in their time together. And he really trusted them and they rose right to that occasion.
And it does make you wonder how he prepped them for this activity.
Right.
There had to have been some conversation about who we think we are versus what people perceive.
Yes.
I would think.
And what we want to hear from each other. What we need to hear from each other. Like to kind of remind them this is time to be uplifting rather than mocking or judging.
And I imagine in the art room, you have to grow that sort of appreciative culture.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because what a vulnerable, risky subject.
Yes.
You're creating things and you're putting yourself on a canvas and then sharing it. You would have to start out right away with a culture that is appreciative and supportive open. Like that.
Yes. Embracing, helping each other grow. I mean, I taught creative writing for a long, long time, and that's the same environment. So I can imagine the work that goes into creating that.
Yeah. I think about this activity and what a risk it was, but how well he executed it and how impactful it was. And I keep wondering, is there a way to do this with grad students?
There is. So I think one of the things that moves me so much about Myah's story is I did something slightly similar as an undergrad in a class, like on the first day. The professor had us put papers on our backs. They were like taped on our backs. And we had to walk around and everyone had to write something on our back about us. And then we sat in a circle and we had to say what was the most accurate and the least accurate from our paper.
Oh, how interesting.
And it was not a good idea. It was a first day, number one.
No, tell me someone did not do this as an icebreaker.
Oh, no, this was an icebreaker.
Oh, no.
This was an icebreaker. Yes. Like I remember it was spring semester. So it was January and I was wearing a brown sweater and someone wrote on my paper, brown. But what else do they have to say? I have brown hair, brown
I don't
eyes, brown sweater.
no.
What are we going to talk
What are
about
you
here?
They don't know you at all.
Nothing. And
what did
yeah,
that is the opposite of Mr. Vincent. That's that's a non-example.
Exactly. So you could go the wrong way with something like this.
Oh, sure. This could go way off the rails, which is why I'm so impressed with his execution.
And that's how I know this student didn't understand or realize all of the scaffolding that went into creating this, because she just was like, I'm putting out my risk. And she was more focused on her risk than what everyone was doing. And I know he had to somehow create the right environment for this, because I've been through something similar in the wrong environment.
Right. Well, we're going to hope, I know this clearly says one of the first projects, but we're going to hope it wasn't first day, second day, first week.
It was.
Even.
There's no way it
couldn't
was.
have been.
No, because in a classroom environment like this, where art is at stake, you build community before you ever take risk. It's 100%. You build community. So it might have been one of the first projects, but it was probably a month in.
Yeah. And I'm certain there was, art, there's so many procedures because there's so many materials and stations. And so we're going to assume there was some teaching brush strokes or something. And then lots of procedures and lots of community building before this. But yeah, not an icebreaker. Like, you know me, I have been on a tear for the past
anti-icebreaker.
Do not create forced vulnerability icebreakers.
Yes.
Just stop it, educators.
Yes.
No more. No more. But this,
I hear that.
This I love. Forced vulnerability is rough. This felt like, you're right. Like there was a lot of foundation building.
Yes.
Before this was just sort of thrown out there.
Well, and the idea of forced vulnerability is, I don't know, you have to be vulnerable in certain spaces.
In the art room, for sure.
And the art room is a space for vulnerability. The chorus room, where I'm going to try my solo, is a space for vulnerability.
Creative writing,
vulnerable. But there are specific spaces that are just made for vulnerability.
And I will suggest the first faculty meeting of a new school year is not a place for forced vulnerability.
100%.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So you have to do some things before you can ask your students to be so vulnerable. But I think Mr. Vincent, we don't have all of that background because Myah wasn't really thinking about that background. Right. She was thinking about, I did this thing and here's what it felt like.
And I remember it.
Yes. And it was such a win for her that I am pretty sure everyone in that room felt that win. He made that happen. And that's the beauty of the teacher.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I love that she thought she was gangly and awkward and different.
Yes.
And they saw those things in her as unique and stylish.
Unique and stylish. Like, what a way to think of yourself.
Yeah.
As a 7th grader.
Right.
Yes. All the things that I think are wrong with me, that I think are not good enough or don't look like everyone else, are actually making me unique and stylish. Yes.
Yeah.
High five, Mr. Vincent.
Because I think there's so many times in middle school, especially, when all we want is just to blend in. Right? And be like everybody else. And why can't my hair be like everybody else's hair? Or, you know, whatever. Why am I so tall? Why am I so short? Why can't I just be average? And he highlighted what was special.
Yeah. And he helped her highlight what is special. He helped her be real about herself, because I can imagine her self-portrait if she felt like an alien, tall and gangly and not of this universe. And he helped her be real about that, number one, and then provided the environment where that would be seen as something beautiful, number two.
Yeah.
So much.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Yep.
So maybe as we go out into this week, friends, let's think about what makes us different, but also special and unique and stylish.
Yes.
What makes us different, that is beautiful. And that is exactly what our schools and our world need.
And exactly what we are supposed to be, because it is absolutely who we are.
Yeah. And let's stop focusing on the one piece of negative feedback instead of all of the beautiful feedback.
Exactly.
Yeah. So next week, we've got a special episode coming up.
Yeah.
Speaking of vulnerability and creativity and bracing ourselves for feedback. Next week is our book launch episode. So friends, we hope you will join us for that special episode. And we hope you will soon check out the Lessons That Last book with all of these stories that we've been sharing with you.
Yes.
Until then, have a great week.
Bye, friends. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you will subscribe to the Lessons That Last podcast wherever you listen. Give us a rating too, which will help other listeners find us. And don't forget to visit chalkandchances.com for more stories. You can also find more information on Julie's research and books. While you're there, take the quiz to find out what kind of memorable teacher you are. I took it and was surprised by what I found. I think you'll find good food for thought. Let us know about your quiz results. We hope you will meet us here each week and bring a friend to share the conversation.